Hi, I'm reading from the book I wrote, fiction detective mystery called A Series of Miseries. I'm reading chapter 9 today, and you can find the book on Amazon.com in both Kindle and paperback version. So, chapter 9, A Series of Miseries. Among Red's hobbies that he took up after his retirement was bird watching. He found it relaxing, and although he wasn't an expert on bird species or sounds, he did have a good time watching these small, relatively inconsequential lives play out in front of him. He bought some equipment to help him hear the birds without getting so close that he scared them off. One of these was a gun looking contraption with a cone for getting sounds from a football field length away. It was cheap and didn't work very well, so he changed the cone that heightened the sound from the plastic that came with the device to a piece of equipment a local chicken farmer provided. It was a metal cone, and for some unknown reason, did a better job. In fact, he had to lower the volume; it was so loud. The contraption worked best at about 200 feet. Red had a plan now for its use in his illegal and very clandestine investigation of Zumi's relationship with Kathy. He wanted to figure out how that impacted O'Brien's death, if it did at all. He just knew something wasn't right. Red picked up his Impala from the garage and turned in his rental, and now knew he had to be more careful as Zumi and anyone else in New Oxford, for that matter, would know his vehicle. It was unmistakably his, and to see the white ghost was to see him. A week later, there came an opportunity when a surprised Daquan told Red that Zumi was taking Kathy O'Brien out to eat at La Fontana and said as much at the office. Daquan related how he thought that was very strange, if not inappropriate, but there was nothing he could say about it. Red thanked him for the information and rented a minivan for his stakeout. He hoped the couple would be taking advantage of the beautiful outside seating environment at the upscale Italian eatery. As it turned out, Red was able to set up the van with his birdwatching listening gear before Zumi and Kathy arrived at the restaurant. Red thought he picked a spot well across the street and down the block, but not too far away to use his cheap equipment. He now had to make sure he wasn't seen. Although the restaurant was named La Fontana, there was no actual fountain outside, unless you counted a small pond with some fish and bubbling water in the middle of the outside dining area. It wasn't crowded yet, as the two involved in the assignation were eating early. Red was pleasantly surprised at the clarity of what he was able to record. He was able to hear them in spite of the chatter of other people nearby. They were seated with Zumi and Kathy at 90-degree angles to Red, which was also helpful, as while they talked, they were not looking directly at the area where Red's van was parked. They didn't look like they were really having a good time together. Both seemed very serious. Zumi spoke after they sat down. Honestly, I don't know what you expect me to do. I'm doing all I can. Kathy, in an angry manner, reported, I expect you to do what's best for us. We've got to keep our goals and plans in mind. This is important. You're letting me down. Red was thinking that Kathy was in this thing and perhaps had been involved for some time. It sounded like she was implying that Zumi wasn't looking out for the two of them. Zumi started to look like he was actually frightened. What are you going to do? Kathy composed herself and said, I don't know. Maybe we should end this relationship. Zumi stammered, What do you mean by end? Kathy waited for a long moment. You know what I mean. Zumi then stood up and threw his napkin down and walked out of the restaurant and went down the street away from Red. Kathy stayed and apparently was going to have dinner by herself. Strange doings, Red thought. Red was shocked, surprised, and dismayed at a banging on the side of his van. He thought, crap! Still, he wondered why they didn't come to the window. When he looked at the passenger side mirror, he saw a tall, young, and strongly built African American man wearing a leather jacket and holding something in his hand that looked like a knife. Rather than get in the back of the van and open the door to face the man in an awkward position, he opened his door and walked around the front of the van to face the man on the sidewalk. Without saying a word, the man lunged at him, and yes, it was a knife he held in his right hand. He drove the blade upward toward Red's throat while he stepped forward with his left foot and reached around Red's head to pull it toward the knife. With Red's left hand, he instinctively grabbed the young man's wrist, and with his right hand, he reached across and did the same, pushing the arm and knife away from him. But at the same time he grabbed the wrist with his right hand, he pulled his right knee up across his body and drove the heel of his foot down in what karate practitioners call a side kick. His heel connected with the inside of the young man's knee, and Red heard a sickening pop. Red kicked the knife that the man dropped away from them both. Hours of training made this possible. Years of training made it effective. Decades of training made it automatic. The attacker screamed and collapsed, his lower left leg bent at an unnatural angle, useless for anything now but a pain factory. Red did not let go of the right hand, though, and he turned it so the man's palm was facing the young man. Red pushed it hard, driving the man all the way to the concrete. The man's upper body turned face down while his lower body was turned up. He was screaming, "Mother," over and over. Red pushed away from him, and once he was at a good distance, he retrieved the knife. Realizing he needed to see that his injured attacker received medical care, even though his own, perhaps illegal activities might be exposed, Red began to try to call 911 on his cell. At that moment, a late model car pulled up to the curb in front of him, and two men jumped out brandishing handguns. One man was black and one was white. Holding their weapons on Red, they pulled their screaming and cursing apparent accomplice into the back seat of the car and then drove off. Red stood baffled, holding the knife in one hand and his phone in the other. He had to sit down and get his breathing under control, checking his oxygen levels. Then he called the Quan. We'll pick it up with chapter 10 next time. Thank you very much and have a great day.